and the instructions on which activity I want you to do. So, who amongst you has been present for the last few weeks that we've been here? Shani and Patience, you've been present, not so for the whole month.
Yes.
Okay. So we've been looking at nutrition in animals, and it's where I want us to revise through to see what we remember. I want you to access this unit. It's under the course on the site. The picture on it looks like this, so make sure you remember that. Reason why I want you to access it is because I have an assignment for you attached that I want you to do. The assignment is right here. Okay, so go in there, do it, and submit after the class today. So assignment is 10 days long. Let's see. Yeah, 1 week and 3 days. So by next week, you should have handed in the assignment already. But for today, we shall go through and remind ourselves of some of these things so that by the time we do the assignment, we are well off, we are good to go. I also instructed you to find a unit in the course that you think is hard for you or that you want to cover that. So go through all the units, make sure that you analyze and see which one you'd love to cover first. So far, this is the unit we have covered, nutrition in animals. So except for this one, look into the rest, find out which one you'd love to cover, and then we shall cover that. So when we looked at nutrition in animals, we looked at the modes of nutrition, where we had autotrophic nutrition, and under autotrophic nutrition, we saw organisms that undergo photosynthesis. Besides photosynthesis, which other organisms undergo autotrophic nutrition besides the photosynthetic organisms? Which others do you know? Shania?
Yes.
Besides the photosynthetic organisms, we know that the photosynthetic organisms use sunlight as the source of energy. Which others do you know that, which category do you know that utilizes the mode of autotrophic nutrition to feed?
Sunlight.
And let me give you a hint. We have those that obtain their energy from chemicals. So how do you call them?
Chemosynthetic.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, it is chemosynthetic organisms. So under autotrophic nutrition, we have the photosynthetic ones, which are the plants, and these chemosynthetic organisms. When you look at this picture, this one here, this picture shows you an area where these chemosynthetic organisms are normally found. We have said that they get their energy from oxidation of inorganic compounds. So examples of these organisms include chemosynthetic bacteria. They live in places like this. These yellow things, yellow chemicals, are actually the byproducts of nutrition of this bacteria. They normally synthesize or oxidize compounds like hydrogen sulfide into sulfur and others. So mostly you'll find sulfur deposits here, and that's why you see the yellowing. Okay. Yeah, so these are bacteria here, very busy feeding. These are some of their waste products. So that's a very good example of chemosynthesis or chemosynthetic organisms and where they live. So again, we're just going through because we have already looked at these things. So, but if you have a question, you can ask. I want us to complete this unit, and once you're done with an assignment or with the assignment that I showed you, we can continue with another unit. So we also looked at heterotrophic nutrition, where organisms make their own food. We have like 5 major types where we have parasitism. Which other heterotrophic nutrition or type of nutrition do you know? Besides parasitism.
Phagocytosis.
Okay. What else? Patient says that's good. Phagocytosis. Any other?
Phagocytosis.
Okay. Yes, pinocytosis. So we have phagocytosis. Examples of organisms that feed by phagocytosis.
White blood cell.
Okay, those are cells, they are not organisms, but I need organisms. Let's see what patients thinks. Which organism do you know that feeds by phagocytosis? She says amoeba, that is correct. Amoeba is a very good example of an organism that feeds by phagocytosis. And other cells like white blood cells, just like Shania said. We have saprophytism, examples of organisms that feed by the saprophytism way, or the saprophytic way. Which examples do you know?
Mushrooms.
Yes, mushrooms is correct. So all fungi feed by saprophytism. And here we see that organisms feed on dead decaying matter. So there we have mushrooms, muca, bread mold, all those. We also have mutualism or symbiosis. Which organisms feed by symbiosis or mutualism? Examples of those organisms.
Like the egret, white bird, and a cow.
Yes, egret, white bird, and a cow. Good. Let's see what patient says. Lichens. Yes, that's correct. Shania, do you know what lichens are?
Lichens. Not exactly.
Okay. Patience, you tell us what lichens are. You can unmute and speak, or you can type. Lichens. So lichens are just a combination of algae and bacteria. They live together to form like a single organisms. They feed on each other, they depend on each other, but they are two different organisms. It's algae and bacteria. Trees. The green patches on trees, have you seen them?
Yes.
Yeah, those are the lichens. So that's a good example of mutualism. They are also found on rocks. If you find those green patches on rocks, those are the lichens also. Okay. So sometimes it's a fungi and algae or bacteria and algae. So that's the example there. Other examples include rhizobium in leguminous plants. Rhizobium is a bacteria that is found in legumes, protozoa, and ruminants. We have, for example, in cows, you find that they live with the protozoa in there, which helps them digest cellulose. Cellulose is a polysaccharide that is found in green plants. So that protozoa helps in digestion. And then the example that you gave, egret, white bird, and a cow. I should have put a cow there. And bacteria in man, bacteria and man in the small intestines. So we have bacteria in our intestines that helps us with sometimes shielding us from the bad bacteria or helping in digestion, things like that. So we also have that good bacteria. Lastly, holozoic nutrition. Here is where we find the herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. And we have various examples each. Okay. And then we went to food. Food is a substance that can be digested and absorbed in the body to sustain life processes. And the reasons why food is required by organisms. Required for growth, respiration, repair of worn-out cells, protection, etc. Looked at the classes of food. What are the three classes of food? Who remembers? Classes of food.
Classes of food. Energy giving foods.
Okay.
Bodybuilding foods.
That's good. And lastly?
Protective foods.
Protective foods. Yes, that is correct. Those are the classes of foods. We have energy giving foods where we have fats and oils and also carbohydrates. Then bodybuilding foods where we have the proteins. Then protective foods where we have the vitamins and minerals. Those are the classes of food. Then we looked at the types of food, and nutrient compounds. If you're missing these notes, you can access them here. But if you also need the PowerPoints that I made, which contains even more pictures and illustrations, you can always check in the WhatsApp group, or you can WhatsApp me and I'll send them to you. You didn't get those PowerPoints. Types of food nutrients, we know these ones. My interest is the roughages and fiber. What are the functions of refuges and fiber? Who knows? What is the function of refuges and fiber?
Help to prevent constipation.
That's very good, Shani. They help to prevent constipation. So every time you feel like you're about to constipate, just go look for those refuges and fiber. You will see what will happen. So those those green vegetables. Some of you were always given the leaves of potatoes. So potatoes contain a lot of fiber. So what these green vegetables or green leaves do to us is that when they get into the large and small intestines, since they can't be digested, they contain cellulose. So there's literally little digestion that takes place on them. So what happens is they stimulate the stomach walls to produce a lot of lubrication. And when that lubrication is produced, then the products in those intestines become more softened, therefore you do not constipate. So that's what they do. That's the science behind refuges and fiber in helping with constipation. Yes, please. Someone is saying food tests. What is wrong with food tests? You left your audio on and you're discussing food tests with someone there. Okay. We looked at carbohydrates also. We saw there are 3 types of carbohydrates, monosaccharides. What are the other 2 types of carbohydrates besides monosaccharides?
Disaccharides.
Okay, disaccharides, and lastly?
Polysaccharides.
Polysaccharides, good. Patience, what is an example of a polysaccharide, you know?
Starch.
Starch, that is correct. What type of monosaccharides are found in starch? Which monosaccharides make up starch? Who knows?
Is it glucose?
Yes. Starch is made up of very many glucose molecules combined together. Hey, very good. All right. With the monosaccharides, we see that they're the ones that are called the simple sugars. And some of their properties are that they are very sweet, they dissolve in water, they form crystals, can pass through a selectively permeable membrane like the cell membrane, and they change the color of Benedict solution from blue to orange when boiled with solution. Thus, they are called reducing sugars. Okay, so every time you hear reducing sugars, just know we are referring to that sugar depending on what it does to the Benedict solution. So when you boil these sugars with Benedict solution, it changes from blue to orange, meaning Benedict solution is reduced. So we call them reducing sugars. Examples are the glucose, fructose, and galactose. Galactose can be found in milk, fructose can be found in edible fruits, and glucose in grapes, sugarcane, other things. Disaccharides, these ones contain 2 sugars, and they when the 2 sugars combined, it results into formation of a disaccharide and water. So when 2 monosaccharides combine, for example, maltose is made up of glucose, 2 glucose molecules, and also water is produced in this combination. Then lactose is made up of glucose and galactose. and then glucose and fructose gives you sucrose. Which of these disaccharides is table sugar? Who knows? Which of these disaccharides is table sugar?
Is it maltose?
Maybe maltose is not that sweet.
So it's sucrose.
It is sucrose. Sucrose is sweet and it's your table sugar at home. It's normally what you put in your tea or milk, depending on what you like to take. As you can see here, we see the examples. Sucrose is present in sugarcane or cane sugar, whatever you want to call it. Maltose is present in germinating seeds, and lactose is found in milk. So of these three, sucrose is the sweetest. Lactose is not that sweet. Maltose is not that sweet. As you can tell, when you take milk that you've not put in sugar, it doesn't taste that sweet unless you put in some sucrose. Yeah. And then we looked at the polysaccharides. These are polymers. They're made up of very, very many units of simple sugars. They're not that sweet. They're actually not even sweet at all. If you have tasted starch, you would know that it's not sweet. And even most foods that contain starch are not that sweet. Which foods do you know that contain starch? Especially a lot of it.
Battery is running low.
Your battery is running, bro. Which foods contain starch?
We have posho.
Okay, posho contains some starch, not much, but some. What else? The biggest example here would be cassava. Have you guys tasted cassava?
Yes.
Is it sweet?
No.
Exactly, it's not that sweet. It contains a lot of starch, and starch is not that sweet. Okay. Yeah, other foods mostly will contain a combination of, you'll find starch in there, you'll find sucrose in there, or fructose, whatever. But foods that have high content of starch, they will not be sweet. Foods like kalo, millet, not sweet at all. But people like to eat those things. It's great anyway. Functions of carbohydrates. The biggest one is energy. That one you should always remember. It's the cheapest source of energy for all organisms. It's also the food reserve. How do animals store their food? In what form do they store their food? Animals. How do they store their food? I'll give you a hint. For plants, they store their food in the form of starch. What about animals? Which polysaccharide do they use? Which polysaccharide do they use? Does anyone remember? Elizabeth, which polysaccharide do animals store as a source of food for later? That's very, very important for you to know. It's actually key for you to know. So Don't forget it. It is glycogen. Okay. Let me see. Someone had already typed. Yeah, Shania was correct. Glycogen, but she put question marks. Glycogen, as if she's asking. Yeah, it is correct. It's glycogen. Glycogen is key as a food storage. Most people who cannot convert the glucose into glycogen for storage, they always have a high amount of glucose in their blood. And what will that cause? Which disease does that cause when you have a high glucose content in your blood? Do you know?
Diabetes.
Yes, that is correct. You become diabetic, okay? When you have high content of glucose, even when you have low content of glucose, you still have diabetes. So any changes in the amount of glycogen you should store or the amount of glucose you have in blood, if it is not normal, you're always going to have diabetes, right? It depends which type of diabetes. So it's important for you to remember that glycogen is very, very key in the health of human beings. We can't have a lot of glucose in our blood, and you can't have less. So the enzymes that help in converting glucose into glycogen, then glycogen into glucose are very, very, very important. Do you know that hormone that helps in converting glucose into glycogen or glycogen into glucose? Which hormone regulates the amount of glucose in our body? You know the hormone?
No.
Patience, do you know? Have you heard of the hormone called insulin?
Yes.
So insulin is that hormone that controls the amount of glucose we have in our bodies. Most people who suffer from diabetes, they have to be injected with this insulin. Okay, so the other thing that we looked at, I think we're going to this place here. The symptoms of these, when you have a deficiency in carbohydrates, you suffer from this disease here called marasmus. Here are some of the symptoms. This picture should show you the symptoms of this disease. Okay. One, you always have high fever, dehydration of the body, growth retardation, wastage of muscles, misery, and shrunken appearance, just like you see this wonderful kid here. This kid has all the symptoms for this disease or this deficiency called marasmus. I'm sure you have seen on the news probably where you find that probably a kid was abandoned in the house, wasn't taken good care of, and they became like this. They started developing these symptoms. This is a great example of that. So once you don't take your carbohydrates, this is what will happen to you. It's important to have a balanced diet so that you can avoid all these. Okay. So, the other thing we can always look at are the food tests. These ones are more practical. I have, let me see. Okay. Thought I put a video here about food tests, but nope. I'll put a video here about food tests so that you can see practically how we do it. As you revise for your assignment, you have to see it and try to attempt that assignment correctly. So mostly here, like we had talked about, we use Pendetic solution. I have a question for you. If for example, I'm testing for glucose and it is present, what will happen to our Benedict solution? I've seen this in the beginning.
Turns orange.
To turn from blue to
Orange.
orange, that is correct, okay? What if I am testing for sucrose? What will be the color change?
Sucrose.
Sucrose is a non-reducing sugar. If it is non-reducing, does it do any effect? Non-reducing means it doesn't reduce Benedict solution.
Yes.
So there will be no observable change. But in most cases, when you want to test for these non-reducing sugars, what you do, you convert them to reducing sugars first. So there you have to add an acid, and then especially most times we use dilute hydrochloric acid, and then you heat. There you'll be converting the non-reducing sugars into reducing sugars. Then you test with Benedict solution, then the colors will change. Okay. So it is important to know that about food tests of carbohydrates. The summary is right here. So we have the different tests here for non-reducing. You will see the color changes and what you have to do to convert them into reducing, and then you add the Bendix and test. For starch, what do we use to test for starch? Do you know? What do we use?
Iodine.
Iodine, correct. We use iodine to test for starch. What colors do we observe when starch is present? The color of iodine is brown. What does it change to when starch is present?
Turns black.
Yeah, the color turns into dark blue or blue black. Okay.
Yes.
Blue black or dark blue, whatever you say, I'm sure it would be correct. So that's very good. Let's watch this video and see some types of carbohydrates, how they're explained here by this wonderful gentleman. It's like a summary of what you have looked at. Oh, let me first share my audio so that you can hear very well. Okay.
What's up, ladies? Brian again, and in this video we are going to discuss the types.
Can you hear very well?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Of carbohydrates. We're going to go over the 3 different types of carbohydrates, the pros and cons to each type, as well as which carbohydrates are best to consume. So, let's roll! So, what are the different types of carbohydrates? The answer to this question depends on who you ask. Some common classifications would be healthy and unhealthy, good and bad, slow and fast. In this video, I'm going to classify them as simple, complex, and fibrous. Before we get into those classifications, we need to look at molecules. I know, fun stuff, but it'll help you understand better. A monosaccharide is a single molecule, such as fructose, which is found in fruit. A disaccharide consists of 2 monosaccharide molecules, such as sucrose or table sugar, and a polysaccharide consists of many monosaccharide molecules, such as whole grain pasta. Now that we have that out of the way, let's look at simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are made up of mono and disaccharides, 1 or 2 molecules. Some foods include fruits, milk, and foods with high amounts of added sugars. Typically, simple carbohydrates are easily absorbed into the bloodstream because of their simple molecular structure. However, when you obtain simple carbohydrates from whole foods, they are usually combined with vitamins, minerals, and fiber, which slows down the digestive process. Now let's look at complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are composed of polysaccharides. So, because of their more complex molecular structure, they can take longer for the body to break down and digest, like whole grains and vegetables. However, some complex carbohydrate foods have been processed, which strips them of some of their natural, high fiber content, as well as vitamins and minerals, so they're digested faster and more easily. So, with both simple and complex carbohydrates, I've mentioned fast and slow digestion. Why is that important? 3 reasons. Number 1, it's going to make you feel fuller longer. Rapid digestion means hunger returns quicker, which leads to more consumption. Number 2, typically slower digested foods cause lower blood level spikes. And number 3, slower, longer digestion means that the body is using more energy over a longer period of time to break down the food, which is an increase or boost in metabolism. Next up is fiber. Fiber is parts of plants that cannot be digested. I have a separate video that looks deeper into fiber that I will link in the little eye in the upper right hand corner of your screen. So the question is, which type of carbohydrates should you eat? Well, it's actually really easy to answer. All 3 types. See, don't focus on the types. Instead, focus on carbohydrates that have been minimally processed, like whole grains, fruits, vegetables, that contain fiber, vitamins, and minerals, and of course, anything from Dairy Queen. I'm just messing with you folks. But seriously, try to minimize the amount of processed foods. It's okay to eat foods you love. I actually love cookie dough blizzards from Dairy Queen, but I don't eat them all the time. It's always about moderation. All right. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up. If you hate this video, you can...
All right, I'm sure you hated the video. Just kidding. But it's a good video that shows you exactly what you've been talking about. If you want to have a healthy diet, then you have to eat all those types of carbohydrates to ensure that your body is nourished. It is important in that way. We have seen the deficiency that you suffer if you don't eat these carbohydrates. Okay, so that's good. The next thing you look at is the proteins. In the proteins, you look at what they're made up of. They have bonds, the sulfur bond in there. They're made up of small molecules, which we call amino acids, or amino acids, whatever you can spell them as. Okay, these are the molecules that make up proteins, right? We have different types of amino acids. We have actually 2. We have the essential and non-essential. Okay. The total is about 20 amino acids that we require in our bodies. Okay. And the essential ones, they cannot be synthesized by the body. So these ones your body cannot make. That's why we call them essential. We need them. Your body needs them. So we can only get them from diet. We can get them from eating proteins. Without eating proteins, you can't get the essential amino acids. And then the non-essential, the body can make. It can be synthesized by the body. So they are not essential in your diet. Okay. You don't need them to be in your diet because your body can already make those. We have very many sources of proteins that you can eat to get these proteins. For example, we have eggs, meat, beans, soya, milk, fish, groundnuts, etc. Do you know any other foods that we can get proteins from besides these mentioned? Which other foods do you know where we can get proteins? Any other foods? I see someone typed here. Eggs are already here, Elizabeth. I need any other. Any other foods? Lean meat. That one is also there. It's right here. So these are different sources. Okay, peas. Yeah, all nuts, not only groundnuts, other nuts too, contain proteins. And which other foods? There are very many other foods that contain proteins. Okay. Most proteins, most of them dissolve in water, form colloidal or sticky suspensions. They are denatured by high temperature. They have both acidic and alkaline properties. The key word here, denaturing. Denaturing is just change in the structure. So proteins have a specific structure. When you put proteins under high heat, that structure is destroyed. Okay. When that structure is destroyed, then the protein is rendered almost useless because it has been denatured. Okay. Sort of killing. So foods that contain proteins shouldn't be subjected under too much heat that would destroy the structure of the proteins in there. The main function of proteins is bodybuilding as the main function. It's bodybuilding. Other functions are like repair and regenerate tissues, synthesis of body chemicals like enzymes, hormones, and hemoglobin, provision of energy in times of starvation. So when your body is starving, to digest all the carbohydrates. Once the carbohydrates are done, it will digest all the fats. And then when the fats are done, it will turn to proteins. Okay. When you don't eat enough proteins, you look like these gentlemen here. These gentlemen are suffering from a disease called kwashiorkor, which results from the deficiency of proteins. Some of the symptoms are loss of appetite, diarrhea, the hair becomes soft and can easily be plucked out accompanied by loss of its growth, retardation, pot belly, swollen abdomen, swollen legs and joints, wasted muscles. All those are symptoms of kwashiorkor. And here is an example of people or kids who are suffering from kwashiorkor. So eat your proteins. Okay. How we test for proteins, we use the Biret's test and Mellon's test. But due to the toxic nature of Mellon's test, it is not commonly used anymore. The Biret test is commonly used. And here you get 1 cubic centimeter of food solution, add 1 cubic centimeter of sodium hydroxide solution, then add 3 drops of copper 2 sulfate, then shake. Turbid solution turned to colorless solution, then to violet, then to purple. Then you know that proteins are present once you see the purple color. If the turbid or colorless solution turned to a blue solution, then proteins are absent. Okay. So the purple color tells us whether we have proteins or not once you add your copper sulfate into sodium hydroxide and your solution you're testing. Those are the colors to look out for. Okay. So now the rest is about lipids. You can go through these in your free times, and then vitamins. Okay, the minerals, these are easier. Watch all those videos. Okay, we have also fiber here that we were talking about. The next time we shall try to go through most of them as you complete the assignment. Okay, it's a somewhat a big unit, but most of the things we have covered. We shall try to go through these, the teeth, dental formula, how to care for teeth, all these, herbivore digestion, and digestion in human beings. So we shall keep going through until we finish this unit. As you guys think of the other unit that you'd love to cover, check in this course that you are added, and you let me know. We shall look at absorption, how each type of nutrient is absorbed, and all these. So make sure you go through. By the time you come back, it's easier. For now, please go start doing this assignment. This assignment is key for you to do, for you to complete this unit. So start on it as we go through the unit. Is that okay? Do you have any questions? Okay, if you don't have any questions, please go start working on that assignment. Have you guys been able to access the site very well? Can you open the site, or it is disturbing? Who has been able to open the site today and looked through the content or anything?
Me.
It was working well?
Yes.
Okay, good. Mine is not working well this side, but if yours is working, that's nice. So go start doing this assignment. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right, so that's today's work. Please access the unit, go through, and then do the assignment. Good job. I'll see you very soon once we meet again. All right, if you have no questions, bye-bye.
Bye. Likewise.
Mhm.